You're listening to the Business Brain Food Podcast, and this is episode 140.
Welcome to the Business Brain Food Podcast, the show business owners listen to when they want to take their business to the next level. Head to businessbrainfood.com.au to catch up on past episodes and access show notes from every interview. Now, here's your host, Ben Futrell.
Well, g'day and welcome back to another episode of Business Brain Food. This, my friend, is the podcast that's 100% devoted to taking you and your business to the next level. In fact, I might say it's 210% devoted, and you'll find out why later. And the good news is, it doesn't matter whether you're brand new to this business thing, so maybe you're just scratching that entrepreneurial itch and starting your first business, or maybe you're like myself and you've been in business for a long, long time. No matter what, there is always, and I guarantee there's always something new you can learn to take your business to the next level, and today is absolutely no different. Oh, looking forward to today. We've got Margie Warrell coming on the podcast today. I'll get to her in a couple of minutes. But her book has a quote by Bear Grylls on it that says, "A book for the brave." So I hope you're ready for this, where Margie goes through the 7 steps to take yourself from where you are now to where you want to be. And, overcoming your fears, really, because a lot of people in business are stuck by their fears. Now, before we do get stuck into chatting with Margie, I wanted to encourage you to head over to MaxMyProfit.com.au, and we've got a free business planning template over there. Also, a free copy of my ebook, Planning Your Path to Success. So both those things are available on the homepage. Head across to MaxMyProfit.com.au and grab yourself one of those freebies. Alrighty, let's get stuck straight into it. Now, Margie Warrell is a global authority on courage, resilience, and human potential. A Forbes columnist, so if you have read Forbes at all, I've been reading Forbes, didn't realise I was reading Margie's articles, but there you go. Margie's got a lot of articles on there. She's contributed to leading media outlets globally from CNN to The Today Show, was appointed as the first ambassador for women in global business, and is a passionate advocate for gender equality. She's also an ambassador for Beyond Blue, committed to removing the stigma of mental illness that's affected her family, and absolutely fantastic. Done stuff that not many people I've spoken to have done, things like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, interviewing Richard Branson, which I thought was pretty cool, released a few books, and I think you're going to absolutely love this interview. So let's get stuck straight into it. Making Your Mark with Margie Warrell. Let's do it.
Business Brain Food.
So knowing that your biggest limiting factor is sometimes yourself, it's great to get Margie onto the Business Brain Food podcast. Welcome to the show, Margie.
Oh, great to be with you, Ben.
Hey, my absolute pleasure, and I can't wait to dive deep and learn a bit more about what you've done. I mean, teaching leadership at NASA, talking to Richard Branson. I've been trying to get him on the show forever, so I'm going to have to hit you up for an intro. I can't help but do that. And then climbing Kilimanjaro. So you've done all these crazy things. But before we do get stuck into having our chat about, how fear can stop people and how to overcome it, I want to find out something a little quirky about yourself.
It's time for something quirky. And now, something quirky.
Whoa. Well, how about the fact that I sucked my thumb until I was in my 40s?
Wow. That's not 40 months, is it?
No, it's not. So that's something a bit quirky for you that I wouldn't have shared until I'd actually stopped it. So I'm pleased to say it's past tense.
Yeah, well, there you go. And what led to that? Did you ever sort of think to yourself when you were getting older, this is not right, I shouldn't be sucking my thumb, or were you 100% comfortable with it?
Oh, believe me, everybody else around me said that. But no, I mean, it was one of those habits just from childhood. I did it as I was falling asleep at night. Yeah. And I think I was like 43 or 44 and a few years ago, and I was like, Margie, it is time. And then I just stopped.
Well, you know what? In 140 episodes, that's the first guest that said they've sucked their thumb till they were 40. So you're very unique, Margie. Probably not the only uniqueness you have.
I probably just lost all credibility with everybody that's listening now. So,
believe it or not, it's probably won you a bunch of fans. Anyway, let's get stuck straight into it. So I'm interested to hear from you, because we have a lot of business owners listening to this show, and I think if you ask just about anybody what their biggest fear is, it's probably failure. Now you've been sort of working in this space for quite some time and written a book called Make Your Mark, which is a guidebook for the brave heart. And I love that you've had Bear Grylls on there saying it's a book for the brave. Tell us a bit about your journey and how you got involved in helping people overcome their fears to be successful.
Oh, they say we teach best what we most need to learn. And so I grew up on a small dairy farm in rural Victoria, Australia, and honestly, my horizons growing up didn't extend much past the back paddock. And for me, just continually having to overcome my fear of failure, of inadequacy, of not being enough, of who are you to do that, to get out and, move to the city and then go and explore the world and so many things, change career and all of the things that I've done. It's just been a lot of many, many steps outside my comfort zone and a few missteps too. But, as I say in the book, as I say, frankly, everywhere, how can we ever, go out there and achieve what's capable if we don't get outside our comfort zone and risk failure and risk making a fool of ourselves in the process?
Yeah. And do you think, fear is something that your body is, meant to do. It's meant to protect you. So is it getting rid of fear altogether, or is it just being able to understand it and work through it? Did you think that's helped you?
Yeah, we wouldn't want to get rid of fear, right? It actually does serve us having some fear, but it is about discerning between the fears that are serving us and allowing us to live long, healthy, happy lives, and the fears that actually keep us from doing that and keep us focused on short-term comfort and short-term convenience. And a lot of people spend their lives with fear really sitting in the driver's seat, saying, "Oh no, don't pick up the phone and invite that person out, or pitch your wares, or go out to that event where you don't know anyone, and don't speak up and have that tough conversation because it's uncomfortable and they could get upset and you might be rejected." And so often fear sits there and really keeps us from making the best possible decisions that we can make and holds us back in so many ways. And, it's why that we know at the end of people's lives, people regret far more the risks that they didn't take because they were afraid than the risks that they did, even when they didn't pay off.
Yeah, I think Jim Rowan, one of my great mentors, he said it best. He said that there's two types of pain in life: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. You can use discipline in whatever way you like, but to push through those barriers sometimes is painful. But if you don't do it, sometimes you're going to regret it, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, the regret comes further down the track. In the short term, we're really good at imagining how we'll feel tomorrow if we pick up the phone and we get rejected, or if we fail at something or make a fool of ourselves, whatever it is. And what we're not so good at putting ourselves in the shoes of us 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now and going, yeah, but how will you feel then? And so we kind of kick the can down the road often, and we don't make the changes, and we don't take the chances, and we don't go out there after what it is we really want. And sometimes, that requires letting go of things along the way. And that's where, so much of my work is really about getting people get present to the cost of the inaction.
Yeah, which is important, isn't it? And it's interesting, just recently in the news, we've seen one of Australia's high-profile billionaire entrepreneurs, Mike Cannon-Brookes, make his own admission. Did you see that news where he said in his own admission he still suffers from imposter syndrome?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? The thing is imposter syndrome. I've written a lot about that, but it's the domain of the high achiever. People who set the bar really low, who aren't trying to live a big life, who aren't driven and ambitious, they don't suffer from it, right? Because they don't sit there going, "Oh my God, I can't believe I've got this success. People think, people are going to realise I don't know as much as they think I do." And my experience is that people who struggle with imposter syndrome are people who really, they are high achievers. And because they're high achievers, they're focused on being really excellent at everything that they do, and therefore they're really present to where they're not absolutely masterful. And I know myself, often I get up to speak on a stage, and sometimes I'm in front of a room full of PhD academics, or when I was met Richard Branson, I'm surrounded by all these people who've sold businesses for $500 million, and there I am interviewing him, and there's that, oh my God, who am I? Do they realise I shouldn't have been invited along? And that's where imposter syndrome really is driven by this fear of being exposed. And whether it's Mike Cannon-Brookes, some of the world's most successful people, they say they feel the same way, that, oh my God, people are going to realise, I don't deserve what I have created.
Yeah, and I think that because they are such good, how do I put it? I don't want to say actors or actresses, but they are. They cover it up, don't they? So the public don't see that until somebody like Mike Cannon-Brookes did come out and said, I do suffer from this. And I think he said that it's a common misconception that successful people don't feel like frauds. But the reality is a lot of them do. And like you said, probably a lot of famous people do as well. What do you think about that acronym, though, for fear? I've heard this acronym, false expectations appearing real. Should we be brushing fear off with that, or should we be getting a deeper understanding of it and learning how to control it?
Yeah. Well, look, I love that acronym for fear, and I've often think it's not what we think we fear, it's what we link to fear. And so often it's the monsters we create in our own head, right? It's not, we tend to create, catastrophize and come up with worst case scenarios and really focus on all the things that could go wrong and all the possible ways we could lose and miss out. And rather than focusing on what we could gain, and that's where it's about stepping back and going, you know what, how likely is it that this would happen? And often not that likely. And two, if it did happen, what would I do? How would I handle it? And often we actually would handle it. It wouldn't kill us. And three, what do I need to be afraid of if I don't take this risk, if I don't do it? And so, that false evidence appearing real, it often is. We come up with these, we scare ourselves by coming up with all these worst case scenarios. And most of the time, the things that we're afraid will happen never really happen. And people spend their lives worrying about it. What did Mark Twain, who said, I've known a great many troubles in my life, and most of them never happened.
Yeah, that is the case, though, isn't it, in a lot of cases? So do you think that there are a lot of business owners that are holding themselves back because of fear?
Yeah, I do. And not business owners, leaders across the board. Absolutely. And I think that's where, sometimes fear can impact us in different ways. So sometimes it's a fear of failure. Sometimes, as you know, sometimes it's a fear of success. If I was incredibly successful at this, what would it mean? What relationships would I need to let go of? What changes would this make in my lifestyle? Where would I lose something that I have right now that actually I value? Maybe it's privacy. Maybe it's, not having everyone looking to you with high expectations. So absolutely, I think that's where we've got to ask ourselves all of the time, if I was willing to lay my comfort and the familiarity of what I have now on the line, what would be possible for me, and to step into that uncertainty. And I think as humans, we're wired to want certainty. We're wired to want to think we can make plans on a future we can predict. And there's a lot of uncertainty right now. And so a lot of business owners will hold off making a decision, will hold off, launching the product, expanding the business, leveraging in some way, whether it's capital, whatever it is, because it's like, I want to have more certainty that this is the right decision. And I think there's obviously a fine line to walk between being brave and being foolish, but often we err on that side of caution that actually prevents us from really taking the business to another level. And that's where it's not about being gung-ho and reckless. Do your homework, make sure you've lined as many things up as you can. But sometimes you just got to make the call and go, okay, let's just do it. And I see a lot of people get stuck in indecision. They're so afraid of making a wrong decision, they don't make a decision, which itself obviously is a decision, and they can miss out on opportunities.
Yeah, in fact, it's not a great decision, is it? I see that happen, a lot in what we do. So, what would you suggest to somebody who's listening to this, that's in their business, and they know? Well, first of all, let's say they don't know that they're stuck because of the fear, or they're not. Is there a way that someone can quickly identify what is stopping me? Is it fear? Is it my fear of failure, fear of success? Is it indecision? Is there something someone can do to sort of go, well, here's where I'm at?
Yeah, no, look, I think a great one is simply to ask, if you weren't afraid of failing, falling on your face, what is it that you would try and do? And sometimes it's like, well, if I wasn't afraid, I'd do this, but I am afraid. So it's not pretending that there aren't risks, but also, just getting that clarity around also what is so important that you need to do that even if you fail, you won't regret it. Because the fact is, sometimes we do fail at things, but, so often that we fail because we don't risk the failure. And so I think you've got to get clear about what is it you want to create in your business, in your life? 10 years from now, where would you really love to be? And it's guaranteed that for you to really be living out that vision, the boldest vision you can imagine for yourself, in your business, for the people that you work for the impact that you're making through the work you do, it's going to require risk again and again and again.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about risk, you said don't be foolish, or don't go out there and do things that are dumb, basically, but without thinking it through. So does that mean you've got to take calculated risks? Is that what it's all about?
Yeah, it's about smart risks, right? It's not about if you've got no idea what the hell you're doing and you go out there and invest $1 million in something and you didn't do your research, that's just stupid. Maybe you'll strike it lucky, but you're playing with fire. But it is about taking what I call the smart risks and looking at going, all right, I've done my homework. I have a sense of where things at. I've tried to mitigate the downside, but I realised that I have to experiment here. I have to try things, and what's the minimal viable product I can go out into the market with to test it, to put my foot in the water and give it a go. So absolutely, it doesn't have to be this all or nothing thing that sometimes people think it does. You can kind of go, all right, let's just test this here, and kind of coming with it from that experimental mindset. People who've built massive businesses, Branson, so many, they didn't start out building the biggest thing. They started out with small things, and they learnt, this works, this doesn't work. How do I adjust as I go along? And I often think if we gave ourselves more permission to not make a brilliant decision every time, to kind of play with it, to experiment, in ways that contain that possible fallout. Over time, we learn what works, what doesn't. We tweak the formula, we modify it, we get more people, expertise on board that we need. And as we go along, then we're actually in a position to take bigger risks. But it's not going straight out the gate going, all right, I'm going to just put everything in this basket.
Yeah, I know. And I think it's important that people do get perspective, because when you talk about the Bransons of the world or the Elon Musks, they're playing at a very different level, but they have been doing it a long time. When we look at Branson for an example, though, when we talk about risk, if you read his biography, he's lost the shirt off his back, or just about, a couple of times.
Oh, absolutely. And I remember when I interviewed him, I talked about, some of his failures, and he shared early on how he was in his 20s. He took out a third mortgage on his home. And his wife, married, young kids. And I said, how did your wife feel about that? And he said, I didn't tell her. And I remember thinking, oh my God, if I was his wife, right, I wouldn't have had a tolerance to put my house on the line, take it for the third mortgage. So he absolutely had a massive tolerance for risk, was really willing to bet the family home on things. But yeah, you're right. Not Virgin Cola, we're not drinking it today. It wasn't successful. And there's a lot of examples of things he's done that haven't been successful. But, of course, when you see someone who has, at the end of their career, he is 66, 67 now, it's easy to go, look at them. But, you've got to look back to, where were they when they were 21 and 22 and 25 and 27? He's been an entrepreneur all his life, but, he didn't start out where he is now. And I think it's important not to make kind of comparisons with where we are with someone who's been in the game 20, 30, 40 years ahead of us.
Yeah, and I think that's that's all about putting it into that perspective. It's easy to do. It's easy to look at them and go, I'm never going to get there. But the reality is you can, but you just need to know how to. Now, your book, Make Your Mark, has a 7-step process for helping people to guide them through the process of getting on with it and getting things happening. Can you talk us through what you've worked out? Because after all these years of working with, because you've been coaching and you've written other books and been involved in space for a long time, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how someone can sort of reset their brain.
Oh, absolutely. I'm kind of happy to kind of go through them fairly quickly. But, the core of it, I've sort of broken Make Your Mark. It's 7 core steps. And the first one is just deciding what you want your life to stand for. Like, how do you measure success? What are the core values that you really want to build your life and your business, everything on? And, and central to that is being really clear about what the big why is. Why do you do what you do? Why are you willing to take a risk in the first place? The second is to set your compass. And in that one, I really get people to think about the biggest, boldest vision they can create, one that inspires the hell out of them, even if it scares the socks off them. Because so often we don't take the time and go, if I could have the ultimate success in my life 10 years from now, say, what would it look like? What would I be doing? Who would I be doing it with? What impact would I be making? What value would I be bringing? How would people think of me? And what would I be looking forward to? And so getting people to get like, let's just, put the line in the sand and go, where is it you want to get to? Because unless we have that vision, any area of our life where we don't have a vision for what we want, we're a little bit like a ship adrift at sea. Without, where is it going? It's sort of, we're at the whim of the tides and the winds and the currents, and we can end up taking a path of least resistance. So that's where it's about really getting clear about What is it specifically that you want to create, that you want to achieve, that you want to do? Third step is about upgrading our mental maps. Your best thinking got you here. And, if it's working for you, fantastic. The kind of mental paradigm you're operating under is working. But, our mental maps is, it's like the stories, the assumptions, the beliefs, everything that we use and lean on to make decisions. And if you continually find yourself in a place where you're not happy, you're feeling stuck, you could be doing more, it really is time to step back and go, where do I need to question, challenge, upgrade some of the assumptions that I'm operating under? And I take people through a process to do that. Step 4 is about exiting the safe lane of life and recognising that the safe lane doesn't always land you somewhere very inspiring. I think so many people, we sort of tiptoe safely through life. And yes, it's all very comfortable and convenient, and we might never kind of feel like we've risked failure, but we're also never get to know what we can do. So I take people through, what does it take to really channel the courage that so many of us have, but it sits dormant. A lot of people go through life, and I think of Turia Pitt, who's a friend of mine, and, she was burnt so badly in her body. And as she said, people say, oh, yeah, you're so brave. She said, but most people just haven't been tested. And I see so many people who, when they're confronted with adversity, they find courage that they didn't even know they had. So how do we access that when life is not demanding it from us? And how do we get into that lane of life that's where we're constantly challenging ourselves, and when we trip up, we don't let it completely deflate, take all the wind out of our sails, which is what step 5 is about, which is leaning into the curves of life. It doesn't always go to plan. Sometimes your best efforts don't work. I know I've had that plenty of times where I have been, this is what I'm going to do and this is how it's going to work, and it doesn't work out that way, and it's easy to feel dejected and get demoralized and call yourself a failure and go, I knew I could never do it, I'll never be successful. But how do we all build that resilience mindset so that when things don't go to plan, we brush ourselves off and go, okay, well, what can I learn from this, and how can I, to quote Henry Ford, move forward more intelligently? Because anyone listening here, if you think back on your life so far, if everything you had ever planned and wanted had gone exactly the way you wanted, you wouldn't be half the person you are today. We learn so much more from the times things don't work out than from when they absolutely worked out first time perfectly. So how do we build more resilience as we go along through life? Step 6 is about building your tribe. What do you need to do to surround yourself with people who bring out your best, challenge your thinking, and keep you ultimately passionate and purposeful? And sometimes that means, letting go of some friendships along the way, but it also means being the kind of person that attracts cool, big thinking people into your life. And if you are the most ambitious big thinking person then you really need to expand your circle and really get other people in your tribe who, when you say, hey, I want to take on, something really big, go, yeah, that's cool. Well, why not even make it bigger? Versus those who go, oh, gee, that sounds difficult. You could fail. And I know in Australia, growing up on a dairy farm, I grew up in a place where ambition almost it certainly wasn't encouraged. It was almost that there was that, well, who are you to do that? Or don't get too up yourself. And I think I lived in America for 11 years, and the culture there is much more, yeah, why not? Of course you can do that. And I think it's really important to surround ourselves with people who are absolutely cheering us on. And if they're doing anything to challenge us, it's to challenge us to actually dial it up another notch. And step 7, Ben, is to run your own best race. And it's really about getting clear about what do you need to do for yourself on a daily, weekly, regular basis that allows you to bring your best self to the big game. So it's about the rituals that you need to create, body, mind, spirit, that really when you get out there, you are focused, you're on fire, you're really clear about the things that where you add the most value, you're delegating, outsourcing, or not doing the rest, and you're running your own best race regardless of what everyone else around you's doing.
Yeah, that's great. Great 7 steps. I know by reading the reviews too before we chatted that you've got on Amazon. I mean, people are finding this book, transformational. The words like transform my life, stop your searches is the book you've always wanted. I mean, you've got amazing reviews up there. And whilst it sounds like a very simplistic 7 steps, I'm imagining this could take a fair bit of time for people to get through.
Yeah, I wrote this book. I started running weekend programs a couple of years back, and I do a lot of keynote speaking. I do one-on-one coaching. Not everyone can be at a speech I'm giving. Not everyone can afford or has the time for direct coaching. And not everyone can come to one of my weekend programs. And so I really wanted to create a book that people can actually, they need to do their own work. I don't tell everyone exactly what they need to do. I get them, there's a lot of space in this book to write in your answers. And I say, read it with a pen in your hand. And research shows that when we take time to write things down, like write down what is your big vision. Don't just think about it. Write it down. It brings it to life and helps us also, when we talk about, well, what is it you're most afraid of? It really helps us dislodge sometimes some of that fear and connect in with what it is that sets us on fire, that really ignites that spark. And so it's not, this book is a massive, it's not actually a physically massive book. It doesn't have, I think it's 30-something thousand words, which is not as big as my other books. But it's really about getting people to take time out from life and go, where is it I want to go? What's the mark I want to make? And what do I need to stop doing and start doing to make it? And, if it's transformational for people, for me, that's hugely affirming and a real honour. But in the end, I really want people to do a bit of the work themselves with it. So hopefully it's inspiring, but also it gets people into action, because it's fine to go, oh, that was nice. It's like, yeah, but what are you doing differently? And that's where it's about. At the end of the book, I get people to create a game plan. Get into action and stay in action.
Yeah, I think a plan is very important. The old saying, when they say if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Certainly don't want to be doing that.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned there at step 1, which I'm really curious to hear your sort of definition of, or if you have a definition, maybe you don't, I don't know. But you said how you measure success, because a lot of people would measure success entirely differently. And then you said, and then why would you risk everything for that? But what if what somebody measured as success was fairly easy to achieve and they didn't need to risk everything? Is that still okay, or are you saying people need to start pushing themselves outside of those boundaries?
Yeah, well, you know what? I mean, the reality is comfortable. Anyone who's comfortable doesn't stay comfortable forever. So, I mean, we can define success in ways that actually on a daily basis. It's like working purposefully toward a worthwhile goal. I can do that every day, and maybe I never actually even achieve the goal. But if I have a sense of meaning in what I'm doing, then that's successful. If I'm building great relationships as I go. So it's not necessarily about, earn 10 million bucks or, floated a company on the stock exchange. It may be something like that, but they tend to be more the goals than what are you standing for. And Michelangelo said, the biggest danger in life isn't that our dreams are too big and lofty and we fail to achieve them. It's that they're too small and we do. And the truth is that this book, I didn't write this book for someone who is content to live a life of mediocrity. I really wrote this book for people who want to live the biggest life that they can. And to live the biggest life that we can, we have to continually be asking ourselves, where do I need to step into uncertainty? Where do I need to stretch myself more? Where do I need to grow more? And, anyone who wants to live their life firmly in their comfort zone, if you absolutely want to live your life firmly in your comfort zone, do not buy this book. If you never ever want to risk failing ever, if that's working for you and you're really happy, fantastic. Don't bother buying this book. It really is a book for people who don't want to settle for less than the biggest and most meaningful life that they're capable of living.
Yeah. Do you feel, I mean, I met a lot of people, I'm sure you do as well, in your line of work, where people, they're obviously on some sort of autopilot and they are living that mediocre life. They're not happy with it, but they're not willing to do anything about it. What would you say to those people? So they, and they typically, I mean, you said it best before, growing up in Australia, and the difference in culture between Australia and the US. I've noticed it myself. You see people drive down nice cars in Australia. They usually get waved at with one finger. In America, people pump their fists and say, "Good on you! What a great car! Well, good achievement." But there are some people that are putting that finger up or calling people names when they're not successful. The old tall poppy syndrome, but they're not happy with where they're at. What's going on there, do you think, mentally for them?
Oh, look, and absolutely. They say often for someone to change, the cost, the pain of staying where they are has to exceed the pain and discomfort of the change. And I meet a lot of people, who live lives of immaculate mediocrity. Their life is lovely and comfortable. It's nice. It's really nice. And that can work for a while, but then over time that comfort actually becomes sets in this kind of malaise. Was it Thoreau who said people who living lives of quiet desperation? And I think that's who you're talking about. And sometimes I'm like, are they really happy? Well, they mightn't be burningly miserable, but they're not. You meet them and they don't have an energy that lifts people around them. They're sort of just there getting along, And I think that's where, for me and a coach, when people reach a point where they're really in pain, and I'm not saying it makes me sound, I need to verbalise this the right way. When people get to a point of being, I can't stand my life anymore as it is. I'm like, fantastic. Let's do something. And sometimes we have to just, even as a coach, I really try and get people present to what is this going to cost you to stay where you are, making the choices that you're making as lovely as they are, as your life is, and what could be possible for you. What would really set your heart on fire. And that's where I talk about in the book. It's about, creating soul level success. And I'm not trying to be overly spiritual, but I'm just saying, what is it that gives us this deep sense at a heart level of real satisfaction in our lives. And so to anyone who's listening and you're like, I don't know if I'm ready for it, I'm like, okay, but I want you just to think about how will you feel a year from now if you don't make a change, and what opportunities are you missing out on because you're unwilling to get uncomfortable, and what would be possible for you if you embraced discomfort as a prerequisite to truly live a life that lights you up, to create the business that really lights you up, to realise how much you're capable of, and to make an impact on the people around you, the ones you love and the ones you don't even know yet, because you're really doing what you can do with the gifts that you've got and the talents you've got and the opportunities you've got. Because a lot of times we've all got great gifts and talents and strengths, and often we just aren't using them in the way that makes the biggest impact, to use the title of the book, that makes the biggest mark.
Yeah. And that's a great answer. What we've talked a bit about fear, of course, and people having to be willing to make a change. I'm interested to hear from you. You must have worked with many people. What is it? Is it just that uncertainty that they fear? Because isn't just staying the way you are going to bring in uncertainty anyway? You can never be certain about what's going to happen.
Absolutely. I mean, we kid ourselves with this illusion of certainty. Well, if I don't change jobs, at least then I'll be certain. And, sometimes people go, yeah, but then this restructure happens and they lose their job anyway. You go, well, there you go. You could have just quit it and gone out and done what you really wanted to do 10 years ago. So, and that's where, how willing we are to sit with uncertainty. And uncertainty, let's be clear, it is inherently uncomfortable. And that's where, and I really talk about this in the book, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and recognizing that feeling uncomfortable, it's not always a nice feeling, but you kind of know you're alive. You're out there, right? The butterfly's like, oh, my God, I don't know what's coming. And I think don't kid yourself that you have certainty. And that's just it. What if you were willing to just take on more uncertainty? And I think a whole lot of things can open up when people are willing to take on a lot of uncertainty, a lot of really cool things, but we have to kind of walk out into the eye of the storm first.
Yeah. It's interesting in the line of work I'm in, we help business owners every single day of the week. And I know I run a lot of free events. I actually say to people, if you are not ready for uncertainty, you don't want to be on the roller coaster that is in the dark, like unpredictable. You don't know when the loops are coming, then go and get a job, because probably business is not for you. But even getting a job is going to have that uncertainty. So it's one of those parts of life, isn't it?
Yeah, though, look, let's face it, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, there is an uncertainty with that. We don't have a security net that a lot of people have when they work for a company and they know that every, 2 weeks they're going to get this much deposited into their bank account. Yeah. And they might lose their job, but in the short term, they're pretty sure they're going to get that much deposited into their account every 2 weeks, whatever. And so you have to be willing to kind of go, all right, I am willing to take that on because I am completely unwilling to pay the price that I have to pay to stay in that job there. It's not worth it. You know, my spirit's withering on the vine. You know, I've got to go out and do it because I don't want to look back one day when I'm 90 years old and go, geez, what if I tried? What if I'd given it a go? And you know what? So many people do look back and they go, oh, I never even knew whether I could have done it because I didn't give it a chance. I didn't even get out the gate. And so, to business owners, I totally realise it can be uncomfortable, but massive possibilities open up. And I think so many of the things that I've done, even in my own work, I was in the corporate space myself. I did a business degree. I worked for big international corporates, and then in my early 30s, ventured out on my own down on this path, doing the work that's landed me to where I am today. It was very uncertain. I wasn't quite sure what I was doing. I just knew that I didn't want to do more of the same, and it's been fairly organic and evolved. I can't say I had some brilliant strategic plan, but it was sort of continually going, what is it? Where is it I think I add the most value? What is it that I have a gift at, that I have a strength at? And focusing on that and kind of running my own best race. And I would say that to business owners out there, it can easily get caught up looking at what all your competitors are doing, but you've got to be focused on what is it that I need to be doing, and where is it that I can add the most value, and not getting too caught up in what everyone else is doing all the time, because that can just suck energy away from you being as creative and innovative and focused as you can be.
Yeah, as you said, that was like point 7, run your own best race. And I suffered from that, years ago. I used to compare myself to others all the time, and I had to stop doing it because it was doing more damage than good. But it's so easy to do in this day and age with, technology making it easy. So many other businesses are visible, but and people, using things like Facebook or LinkedIn, but you only ever see the good stuff, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I'm like, you know what? It's funny, a few people have said to me, oh, do you know so-and-so, they do what you do. I'm like, I may have met them if our paths have actually physically crossed sometimes. But honestly, I don't get caught up in focusing what everyone else is doing. There are other people who can offer similar services and do so. No one's going to do it exactly the way I do it, right? They might do it similarly. But it's not the way I do it because they're not me. Yeah. And I think just what is it? Focus in on what it is you do. Well, what's your point of difference? Dial up your point of difference. Really own that. And I think a mistake we sometimes make is looking around at what everyone else is doing and trying to be too much like a bit of everybody else versus, 210% yourself.
Yeah, that's good advice. Be 210%. I'm going to quote that. Be 210% yourself. Now, I know we're starting to run out of time. I do have a couple more questions. I was just wondering your thoughts on, you said to set your compass and get, stretch your goal out to 10 years and, really get clear on where it is you're heading. But then you talked about some people need to be in a whole bunch of pain before they move. And we see that with people with health and things. They might have a health scare with I don't know whether it's a heart attack or a cancer scare or something before they, get fitter or they stop smoking. Do you find that people, is there a rule of thumb, are people more likely to move towards something that's a vision, that's a nicety rather than move away from a pain?
Yeah, good point. And sometimes those, I've met people who've had cancer and say best thing that ever happened to them. Absolutely woke them up to life. Like, what the hell am I doing with my life? It's too fragile. But you're right. Your point is, we're at the most basic level, we're motivated to move toward pleasure and away from pain. Moving away from pain is a stronger motivator than moving toward pleasure. And that's why, as a coach, as a writer, as a speaker, it's not just about saying, what's the vision that inspires you? I generally say here, have a 10-year vision, but, set the goals at shorter term. I can short, medium, and short, immediate, short, long term. And I think that we have to also get really present too. But what's the pain you're trying to avoid? And one of the pains you're trying to avoid is the looking back and regretting and wondering, well, what the hell, what if I tried? And so that's where, looking at what's the cost of inaction, what's the cost of staying the current course, of operating off the same set of assumptions, keeping that label stuck on your head that, oh, I can't do that, or I'm not good at that, or, no one will ever trust me with this, or, I didn't get educated enough, or whatever BS stories that we buy into, because we've all got stories, and often the big stories we have completely limit what we're doing. And so really, I really want people to get present to what pain are you going to feel if you don't bloody well get out the gate and put yourself out there and risk the failure, risk rejection every day. You know, you should be risking rejection all the time. You should be risking making mistakes all the time. And if you're not constantly risking that, then you're playing too safe.
Yeah, get out of the safe lane, put that indicator on and merge on out. I love it, Margie, I love it. Now, we're out of time, unfortunately, because I could talk to you all day about this. I think, so many people's success, people are looking for the magic pill. You know, they look for, we say, I just want marketing help. I just want to, give us the magic pill for generating dozens of leads or whatever it might be. But that's not the answer, is it? Sometimes the answer is within, and it's about making sure that you're not holding yourself back. So I just love what you're doing. I really think a lot of people will get a lot of benefit out of just hearing you talk today, but obviously reading the book as well.
Oh, absolutely. And, just on the marketing, the pill to generate lots of leads. And, I mean, there's a million people out there pitching their wares on how to set up a sales funnel and how to do this and how to do that and how to grow, And often people get so caught up applying all of this advice that they don't stop and ask themselves, but what makes sense for me? Because there's a lot of people following other people's recipes, and other people's recipes aren't working for them because they're not stopping and going, but is this right for me? And even when we know what to do, we don't always do it. And nothing attracts success like someone who is passionate, purposeful, and willing to continually try things and learn and adjust as they go. So just if I wrote about this in the book, but I talk about it a lot, sunk cost bias. If doing more of what you're doing, it's just not going to produce a result, stop doing it. Sometimes you got to say, hey, this is not working. Quit quickly, fail fast, move forward, but don't keep digging the hole if what you're trying isn't working. Sometimes the bravest thing we can actually do is to stop and go, that didn't work. I thought it would. I invested a hell of a lot in it, but it didn't work. I need to just cut my losses now and shift direction. Shift strategy.
Yeah, good advice. I've always hated that saying that winners never quit and quitters never win. I don't think it applies to business somehow.
It sounds nice, but you know what? People like Branson's a great. And winners quit. They quit all the time. They just don't spend 5 years getting around to quitting. They go, okay, it didn't work, cut the loss, move on. I think,
on with the next. Well, it's been absolutely amazing. How can people find out more, Margie, if they want to find out more?
Oh, look, probably the best place to just jump on my website, MargieWarrell.com. And for Americans that are listening, the way I pronounce my name, it sounds to them like Maggie. So I'm sure they'll find a link with this podcast. But MargieWarrell.com, or go to look at the book, MakeYourMarkGuidebook.com.
Fantastic. Now, we'll have all those links in the show notes, everybody. So if you're driving along or you're at the gym or doing something where you can't write that down, head to businessbrainfood.com.au. This was Business Brain Food episode 140, so BBF140. All the links will be in the show notes, not only what we've spoken about today, but also any extra links we find that we think would be helpful for you to find more information about the book or about Margie. Margie, all I can do once again is say thank you so much for sharing with us today. I've absolutely loved it, and I know the listeners would have got a lot out of it.
Oh, fantastic. And there's a free excerpt of the book people can download when they go there too. So just thought I'd throw that one in.
Oh, fantastic. So if they go to MargieWarrell.com, there's a excerpt there.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yep.
So there you go. There's a freebie for you, folks. Make sure you head across there, download an excerpt from the book. Why not just go to Amazon and buy it? It's got some amazing reviews, and I think that's probably the best thing for you to do. Go and buy the book and go through it. Sounds like it's a bit of an exercise book that's worthwhile buying. I'm going to get myself a copy because I think I could definitely do with making my mark in a different way. All right. All we've got left to do now, Margie, is the 60-second scramble. Are you ready for that?
I'm bracing myself.
Let's merge on out of that safe lane. Let's do the 60-second scramble. Lean into this. Here we go. Favorite app on your phone?
Spotify.
Do you have a hidden talent?
Singing.
Singing. Awesome. I've had a few singers on that. I won't make you sing. What's your biggest addiction?
My cup of tea in the morning.
And have you got a mentor that you look up to that's guided you?
Several.
Fantastic. What's your favourite book?
A Road Less Travelled.
Best way to tune out and relax?
walking along the beach.
Yeah, that's a nice thing to do. What about your number one tip for being efficient? I think business owners love hearing these ones.
Daily planning and just getting away from devices.
Yeah, that's getting harder and harder these days, but it's very important. What's the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Frogs, snakes. I know. Crickets in Vietnam.
Crickets.
Fried crickets.
Crickets in Vietnam. There you go. Well, once again, Margie, been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I know that the listeners will get a lot out of it, and you can go and grab an excerpt from Margie's book at her website there. All the links will be in the show notes there, BBF140. Thanks again, Margie.
My pleasure. Take care, Ben.
Learn more to earn more.
Well, there you go. Making Your Mark with Margie Warrell. Head across to MargieWarrell.com. Grab yourself that free excerpt of the book. And I'm dead set serious. Head across to the Amazon store and just buy it. Make your mark. If you read the reviews, it's almost irresistible not to buy it. And I think it's $20, $25 on Amazon. You can get it there. For if it's going to change your life for that sort of money, why wouldn't you? That's what I would say. Why wouldn't you grab yourself a copy? Absolutely amazing. And there is a Kindle version available for $10. I think maybe US, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Who cares? Just get on there and get yourself a copy of that book. Thanks again, Margie, for coming onto the show, because I think so many of us as business owners, I know me included in this, by the way, I never excluded myself from any of this when I was saying, business owners, I'm part of that group. I know I can sometimes, and you probably are the same, can get crippled by fear, the fear of the unknown, or the fear of what might happen, or what you might lose if you take that risk, or you don't often think about what you're going to lose by not taking that risk. And I think that's a really good question that Margie asked, and I'm going to ask you that question to repeat it. What will you lose by not changing? And I always say to people at my events, at the beginning of my free workshops that I run, I always say that one of my goals is to break the habit where they come along to events, or you listen to podcasts, or you read a book, or whatever it might be, you write down some ideas that you're going to go away and do, and then you do nothing. I like to break that habit. That's my sort of, passion, is breaking that habit for you, is letting you know that it's okay to break that habit. Get out of, as Margie said, put the old indicator on and move on out. Merge on out of the safe lane and lean into the corners of life and start taking some risks, calculated risks, little ones to start with, but, make your life more meaningful. What a great interview. Absolutely inspired myself by listening to that, and can't wait to get stuck into Margie's book. All right, now the podcast is brought to you by MaxMyProfit.com.au, and I'm going to encourage you to head across to MaxMyProfit.com.au. We've got a free business planning template that has helped grow hundreds and hundreds of Aussie businesses, hundreds of businesses across the world. So you can go download that. The other thing that's available on the homepage at the moment is a free copy of my planning book, which is Planning Your Pathway to Success, which we've got in ebook format, so you can go and grab that as well. A bunch of all sorts of other resources over there as well. If you are also enjoying the podcast, and I'm assuming if you've listened through all the way to this point, you must like the podcast, especially if you listen to all 140 episodes. But if you haven't already, head across to the iTunes store and leave an honest review and your feedback there. It really does help. It'll make you feel good. So that's the upside. It'll make you a superstar, though, and I'll love you forever. So if you could do that for me, that'd be fantastic. I was almost going to say fan-bloody-tastic. I thought I better not swear, but who cares? It's an Aussie podcast, and that word is not really swearing. So there you go. Well, once again, thanks for tuning into the Business Brain Food podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure, being your host today. Loved talking to Margie about making your mark, and not hopefully, let's forget the word hope. Just go and do it. Go and make your mark. Go and make your mark. Let people know you're here. Make some noise. Be noticed. Until next time, have a profitable day.
You can fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You can live all you ever wanted.
The Business Brain Food podcast was brought to you by MaxMyProfit.com.au.